to freeze some chard. A lot of you probably belong to CSAs and you get chard every week and you say, oh my God, I can't eat anymore right now. But guess what? It's one of the most wonderful things to have in the wintertime. Really nice and nutritious and green. And so it's very easy to get your share home and you don't know what to do with your chard. You have too much in your bag. You say, okay, I'm going to freeze the chard right away. So this is very easy. I'm just finishing up the chopping of these plants right here. And we have already started our boiling water over there on the wood cook stove. And I'm going to bring it over there and throw it in. So the deal with freezing vegetables is that we want to make sure that we stop the enzyme action of the vegetables, but don't really destroy all of their food value. So that means we want to have a quick cook, and just to stop the enzymes, but to keep as much food value as we can in the plant. Obviously, it's not as nutritious when you bring it back out and have to reheat it and all in the winter, but it's so much better generally than what you're going to buy at the store regardless. So, healthy food, properly processed, preserved, is going to be a great addition to your wintertime meals. And my arms are burning off here on the stove right now, but there we go. We put that in the stove, and I'm going to wait for it to come back to a boil. The important thing is to let it boil first, and so that it's good and hot, and then bring it back to a boil. And after you bring it back to a boil, I usually count about a minute, but I have been doing this for so long that I don't even really count it normally. I just look at it and I can tell when it's ready by the color, because there's a slight color change when you move to that place of blanching, I guess would be the right word for it. And then after the slight color change, there's a deeper color change, and after that it's probably not that tasty or good for you. So we're going to try to catch it right at the point where it changes color, has a little bit of cooking done to it, but then not too much. So let's wait 1 second here. We do have a very hot fire, which you can't see from where you are, but it's going quite heavily right now. And normally, of course, we freeze in the fall and the winter, but even though it's only July 9th, we just came in from picking all day long in the cold, somewhat cold rain. Several, 1 or 2 inches, I'm not sure how much it was. So we were quite happy to hang around the stove today. All right, so it's starting to wilt a little bit, and here you can see that, but it hasn't really come back to a boil. So just spin it around a little bit, and then just put that lid back on. You can see it is quite steamy on the spoon, but just need to bring that boil back.
What else? What other kind of vegetables do you blanch, Julie?
Really, all of the brassica family. That would be like broccoli and collards and kale, cabbage. One could do Brussels sprouts, but I usually don't do that. Cauliflower. They need a variable amount of time depending on how hard they are. Obviously, like a cauliflower or a broccoli will take longer because it's more than just a leaf; it's a head. But the things like cabbage, maybe somewhere in the 1 to 3 range. Let me see, what else do we freeze? I also freeze peas and green beans and corn. Peas are going to be more like 3 minutes. Corn, maybe some more like 6 minutes. Cut it off the cob and then just put it into the boiling water. Green beans somewhere in that 3-minute range. Again, still coming down a little bit, but not quite ready to. It's not quite ready to boil, so we're going to just give it a little bit more time. But it's a really good way to go. We generally raise enough food here to keep us going for our entire winter.
What other kinds of food preservation do you do?
Oh, well, that's a good question also. We dry things. You see over here is our dehydrator. We dry all sorts of herbs. Dandelions and nettles and comfrey, the greens, but also the roots. Yellow dock, burdock, dandelion root. Anything that comes in the spring that's more of a what you call Most people call them weeds, but they're these really very nutritious plants that come in from the wild. We sometimes will dehydrate squash, summer squash. Sometimes I will preserve summer squash by blanching it like this. Now we have a boil here. You can see it's coming, so I'm going to just stir that a little bit more, and I'm going to count this as our boil here. I'm going to just look at my watch and do about a minute. The interesting thing, there are certain things like peppers and tomatoes. If you want to freeze them directly, you can just slice them and put them in a bag in the freezer. They have enough sugar in them that they don't need to be blanched. They don't have that problem of just when things aren't blanched that are greens like this, they kind of turn into a cardboard tasting thing. Their enzyme action continues on the plants, and they just aren't any tasty at all. Peppers, tomatoes, and then all the berries can be just frozen straight up. You can freeze leeks by just slicing them and putting them in a bag in the freezer. Also a very nice treat in the winter time. Of course, you can can tomatoes. You can can a lot of things. I don't tend to can so much because it really cuts into the nutrition more as you go through this whole process of hot water bath and cooking longer and all that. So we tend to do as much freezing as we can. I do canned tomatoes because they take up way too much space if I were to try to do that in the freezer. We also make applesauce. We just chop up our apples and add water and boil them down in a 5-gallon pot. Run it through a Foley food mill, one of these hand crank jobs, and then just save that in quarts and freeze those. We have that frozen applesauce every day, pretty much. Over here we have some garlic scapes that are getting ready to be ground up in a food processor with some oil, and we'll just, with those, grind those up and then put them in containers and freeze them directly too. The onion family, all those can go in without any extra cooking, which is really nice. So we're starting to smell this right here, and we have a minute. So I think I'm going to take this off, and then you can see what that looks like. A little bit of a color change, but it's still pretty bright green. And there's still a lot of nutrition in there. So I'm going to close this up a little bit to cool down the fire. Take this over here. And pour these guys into the colander, and put on the cold water, and stir it with a spoon to get it cold as quick as possible. And get that drain out of there so you can get the cold water, get the hot water down the sink, and not impeding our cooling process. It's best, all this stuff needs to be done quickly, cooling as fast as you can, and then kind of patting dry and putting in I use a plastic bag. I just upgraded to buying my bags from Uline because the ones I get, the Ziplocs, tend to break down after a year or even less. Sometimes they'll break and rip, whatever, these bags. I forget what mill this is. Do you have any idea? Is it 6 mil maybe? I got a pretty high mill bag here so that we can really, I don't prefer to use plastic, and I've been a recycler, all of my adult life for the last, 50 years or so. So I do want to recycle. We do use a lot of plastic because of the business we're in, but if we can recycle it over and over again, that's much better than single-use plastic that has to go to the dump. So at some point, I guess when plastic is banned, we'll go back to using paper or wax or whatever, wax paper or whatever people used to use, I guess. I guess my mother, in the early days when she was freezing, would put things in these wax boxes. That was what was available in the 50s. All right, so we are pretty cold here. I'm gonna get all as much water out as we can. And then we're just gonna load this up in here. And since we feed a lot of people around here, I used to package in these little containers, but now we have so many people here for lunch and supper, I'll do a big batch of this. And with this bag, I can probably give it a sharp crack once I take it out of the freezer and have it break somewhere in the middle of the greens and maybe use just half a bag. But for our purposes, this is a good size for freezing for, you know, a nice meal or two. So I'm gonna let the little space there for the air. Let's flatten this all out and take out most of the air, and we are good to go. And I will take this and put it in our this nice deep freezer, and we are good to go.
And do you have any suggestions for if you don't live on a farm where you can get vegetables to do food preservation with?
As a matter of fact, we are making chard available for sale right now. Many Man's Organic Farm. We have a lot of extra out in the field, and we're selling it for $3.50 a pound if you want to buy 10 pounds or more. So you could get it from us if you'd like. Just contact me at julietmhof.net and place your order.
Amazing. Well, till the next food preservation video, thanks for watching.
Okay, thank you.